So, when doing research, it's important to remember that for the participant, this can feel like a unusual experience for them. They don't know quite what to expect. And a key role of the facilitator is to help make them comfortable. Um, and for the facilitator to really be able to focus on the participant, create the right atmosphere, create good flow during the session so it feels human.
You're not there for them to answer your questions. You're there to understand what their experience was, right? And you don't want them to just answer in short little yes, no, or yes, because. You want them to tell you stories, because it's in those stories where you'll really get behind their motivations, what drives their behaviors, their routines, how they really feel about something.
Everyone has their own ways of building rapport. I guess there's two things I rely on to some extent. I definitely like humor. I'll try to get them to laugh, or I will try to get them to say something funny that I can enjoy. But the minute people start laughing, things go a lot better. People relax and there's a connection. And I'm even not afraid to bring a little bit of my own experience into something. So if they seem like they're hesitant or don't feel good about something they're telling you, if you can reassure them, like either, oh, this, yeah, we've heard this, or yeah, I've been through that myself, it can help a little bit.
You need to, even if it's the most boring topic in the world, you need to express in your body language and your responses and your facial expressions that you are genuinely interested in every word they have to say, right? Which means like literally body language, it's like lean in, like, oh, that's really interesting. It's like, and, even gestures like this of like, oh, tell me that. Yeah, that's good. It expresses to them at a subconscious level that, oh yeah, I see. They want more of this.
As you build rapport, you want to understand more and more about the context of that person, especially things that are germane to what you're trying to learn about. So if you're trying to understand family dynamics around money and finances, then good rapport building questions can be about that family, who they are, what they do, their names. As a facilitator, it's important that you do active listening during the session, that you're not focused on the next question you want to ask or have I covered that topic, that you're really focused on the participant and building off of what they're telling you, and trusting that eventually you'll get to all the things that you want to get to. You may hear some things that they say during the conversation that you might want to jot down on a piece of paper to remind yourself to come back to it later. And that will kind of offload it from your brain thinking about it, and you focus right back on the participant. I can't think of any session in which I walked out of there with only what I thought I would walk out of there with. It was always following some train of thought that the participant had where we got to some really great stuff.
As you're hearing what they're saying, absorb it, right? And that's also being empathetic. You kind of absorb what they're saying. And instead of just taking an answer to a question or a line of questioning and then moving on to the next line of questioning, bring those answers with you into the next line and bring the next set with you. So you're kind of building this body of work, and you're starting to, and this is the real-time part, you're starting to develop a profile or an understanding of who this person is, what motivates them, why they do the things they do, and then start to embody that in your questions that you're having at that point forward. So, and that's kind of a real-time analysis. And then on top of that, just like each set of questioning kind of builds within a given instance, you also have to bring in all the other research that you've done before, so that when you start to hear things that start to confirm patterns that you're even starting to notice, then you can, instead of literally asking the same questions again, you can modify those questions to go deeper.
So if you're trying to ask an open-ended question, probably the worst thing that can happen, or at least this is when I know that I've strayed off the open-ended path and have fallen into not open-ended questions. And that is when I find myself asking a series of questions like, so would you, or would you, or would you? And then I realize that I have created a badly formed question and it is now time to recover. And typically what I'll do is interrupt myself at that point, go, or let me ask it another way. And then I'll go into a better formed open-ended question. And so I have a few tricks to make sure I'm asking good open-ended questions. And it's really about how you start. How do you begin the thing? So some of the formulas that I'll use is, can you tell me about, or can you tell me a time when you, or something along those lines. But just figuring out if you've started a question and it's gone south on you, changing it into one of these known formulas is a very reliable way to make sure that you are asking a question that will get you good answers.
Never ask a question with a conjunction in it, with an and. Because if you ask a question that has more than one question in it, the participant will always invariably only answer the last question you asked.
So one of the things that we're often asking people to do, or one of the things that we want, are lists of like their top pain points or their top preferences. And I've noticed when we ask questions like that, sometimes people will lock up on that question too. And it's because they're trying to do two things at the same time. They're trying to remember concrete instances, and they're also trying to compare them and weigh them against one another, and it can bring the rapport to a halt. So I've found I like little formulas, and one of the things that I'll do is say, hey, if you were making a list of some of the things that were really painful to you, what are some of the things that we see toward the top? And typically the way the answer goes is, well, this bothers me. And you know what else bothers me? This bothers me too. But you know what? The one that bothers me the most, here's what bothers me the most. And they come to clarity as they sift through their memories, and they'll typically prioritize it for you at some point.
The most important tip that I can give you is that silence, especially an uncomfortable silence, is your best friend. So what do I mean by that? When you're talking to someone, it's great to like have the expressions and the nodding, but oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to stop. Yeah. That uncomfortable silence, it's uncomfortable for the participant. And it's okay to make them a little uncomfortable because they're like, oh, he's expecting me to say more. So then they will. And you need to make sure that your partners know that are working with you. It's like, nobody talk except for the participants.
So there's a couple of things you might run into during your studies related to like where you're going to have a challenge with the participant. So one would be that you just have the wrong participant, that recruiting has given you somebody who is not a good fit for your study. In that case, you just want to cut it short. Everyone's time is valuable, and just move on to the next participant and just allow them to go back to their life. The second thing you might run into are participants that have trouble expressing themselves. So they are the right person, but you're having trouble in the session getting them comfortable and getting the information that you want to get out of it. In those cases, what you need to figure out is there anything that you can do in how you're conducting the session to make them more comfortable and help them share with you the things that you're trying to learn. So if you're doing an activity and they might not be responding to that well, don't be afraid to just move that out of the way and come up with a different way to get to the information.
Sometimes I'll stop and I'll say, well, the reason we're asking this, the problem we're trying to solve, or that we're trying to get insights into here are blah, blah, blah. And I'll just turn it into, can you help us understand this? And sometimes that's helpful as well.
in terms of how to deal with somebody who might be really resistant or really belligerent. One thing that I've done that I think has been helpful is to kind of step out of the interview and then just talk to them as a person in that case of like, I'm sensing a lot of resistance here. It's like, let's talk a little bit about that. Why? Because again, you did agree to participate in this, but I'm feeling like you don't want to. And is there a reason for that? What's driving that? And in some cases, I found that they're often a dissatisfied customer, right? And they saw this as an opportunity to complain, to vet their complaints with the particular client or whatever with the situation. And when we got into the interview, they realized I didn't come here to talk about that. And so that's where the resistance came in. Like they had expectations. They had different expectations than what we were there to do. So you sacrifice some time and say, okay, well, let's talk about that because you have a beef you want to express. It's like, let's help me understand that because, put the protocol aside or the standard fare aside. And it's like, well, let's talk about that because there was an experience there too. So getting that story, giving them the opportunity to express themselves in that way. And then hopefully you have some avenue to express that back to the client at the end that you might be able to close a loop there. So you could turn kind of a really uncomfortable situation into a positive one.